And what's happened over the last 100 years has been pretty remarkable, too.
Yes, and the 100 years I've lived has been even more remarkable. That's pretty much all of modern biology, modern medicine, and modern industrial civilization, modern chemistry. Just imagine what the world would be like. You know, we had photographs for 100 years before we had modern chemistry. But no, it was done by a guy who was a natural, very good chemist. But nonetheless, and he created a mighty company, a great growth stock, and so forth. And it finally wiped out the shareholders in bankruptcy.
Eastman Kodak.
Yes, Eastman Kodak. Yeah. Which is an amazing story that could happen. And of course, it helped me because if somebody as brilliant as old Eastman and somebody who hired as many brilliant people as old Eastman did could take the company into bankruptcy, I figured that lesser people could easily take big companies into bankruptcy eventually, in spite of their best efforts. It wasn't like Kodak didn't try. They hired the most brilliant graduate students. They gave them all kinds of time to think. They learned everything any important man on earth learned as quickly as they could, and so on and so on. And even so, they wiped out the common shareholders.
And that taught you what, as an investor, as a businessman?
Sure, and I was going to be a common shareholder someday in some company, and it would help me to know that it was very easy to wipe out the common shareholders, even a great company run by a genius.
I mean, that's an argument for being diversified, but yes, it is an argument for being diversified.
But
that's not really what the lesson you took away.
There's some argument for being diversified, but there's also some argument for being non-diversified, and the argument for being non-diversified is better for a few people than the argument for being diversified.
So the lesson I would take out of that is to be diversified. That's not the lesson you took out. What's the lesson you took out?
Well, it was going to be very difficult to be excellent enough at anything to make any money. That's the lesson I took out of it. And I could look around me. And I was lucky there, too, because one of my father's two best friends was a guy named Eddie Davis Sr. And Eddie Davis Sr. was the leading urologist, well, probably in the United States at the time, and just working as a private physician who taught medical students urology without charging for his teaching time, because that's what doctors did in their days. They were volunteers at the medical school. And they also furnished free medicine to their colleagues whom they knew. So it was like a cartel against the rest of us. And a courtesy to the noble profession. And if you read the Hippocratic Oath carefully, which I'm the kind of a fellow who did, it doesn't sound like nobility. What he was telling the doctors to do was to keep their secrets away from the people who might compete with them practicing medicine. Do not reveal the secrets of our craft, outsiders. That's the great rule of Hippocrates.
Not do no harm?
Well, he gets credit for that one. Yeah. But what he really emphasized was, don't tell anybody else how to do this. The people who have the modern system of this are the magicians.
Okay.
They have kind of a code of not telling the public how they're doing the tricks.
Right.
And for a long time, I could not understand how they turned those women back and forth into apes or panthers and so forth in Las Vegas.
Right.
And I could smell a panther, and I knew panther smell. And I thought, that is a hell of a magic trick that they're fooling my sense of smell. And I couldn't figure out how the hell they were doing it. I could figure out how they were my sense of smell. They were bringing in panther smell, but they weren't. But they also they turned the women into panthers and back into women.
Yeah.
And I couldn't understand how they were doing that. And when it was finally explained to me by some guy who broke their code, like the code of Hippocrates, don't tell the outsiders our tricks. What they had little slats of mirror that slid out of little slats of bamboo. And by using those little slats of mirror, for Frenchie, a button would move out.
It would show you a different.
It would show you a different image.
Yeah.
And it was just it was a clever goddamn contrivance to fool the eye and mind of man. But you saw and smell a woman turning into a panther.
I never saw that.
It was a tiger more often than a panther.
Yeah.
But that's the way they did it. I did not anticipate when Warren and I were starting with our little piddly start that we'd ever get to 100 billion, much less several hundred billion. It was an amazing occurrence.
What happened that you didn't anticipate? What led to that success?
Well, we got a little less crazy than most people, and a little less stupid than most people, and that really helped us. Then in addition, we were given this much longer time to run than most people because something kept us alive into our 90s. And that gave us a long track from our little piddling start all the way to the 90s. Those are the two things that really happened. And, of course, we wised up over time. We got into better and better companies, and we understood more and more of the bad things that could happen to you and how easy they could creep in. And we avoided them even more assiduously when we were old than we did when we were young. And it all worked. The main trick that Berkshire shows is the power of what I call the Wooden effect. And Wooden was the most famous basketball coach of a whole era. And you figure out what the hell he really did, which, of course, somebody like Warren and me, we just automatically do it. He concentrated about 90% of the playing time in 7 players, and everybody else was just a sparring partner for the people. And that turned out a great system for winning at basketball because you identified your best player and concentrated so much of the playing time on your best player. And more playing creates better. You learn by playing in a way you can never learn just by shooting practice baskets. And so he concentrated all his playing time on his best players. Simple idea. That's what Berkshire did. Of course, it worked better, and everybody's learned it.
You've talked about...
Everybody would know it automatically if it were just a little more obvious. If all of us had to make a living backing people in chess tournaments where there's very little revenue to pay anybody anything, we'd all recognize we have to get into the top 7 players or something like that, or have no chance of winning. Chess tournaments.
Yeah.
And everybody would be trying to play the Wooden style to get the bet. But in investment picking, people think anybody can learn it who just goes to Harvard or Columbia or something. And of course, anybody can't learn it. It's like chess or mechanical ability or a lot of other abilities. It's somebody who does it a lot and has a natural aptitude for it, who's the outlier, who gets the big results. And that's what happens in the investment world. Just a few outliers make the money. Now, we've also created a whole lot of people who get the reputation of being geniuses, who run venture capital funds and so forth, and who do pretty well for themselves because they get paid so outlandishly. But they don't really get the bottom 80% of the people who invest in venture capital would be better off if they didn't even look at it.
So they're just
The people who stumbled into Sequoia in the right year were different. They got a long, long run when Sequoia didn't try and grow. And they got the advantage of milking Sequoia. But that was rare. Nowadays, everything is quite different. I do not think venture capital will win in the future the way Sequoia once did. And I don't think Sequoia will win in the future the way Sequoia once did. It's too hard. It's too damned hard.
Meaning that they were...
There's too much failure, difficulty, accident in the world. It's really hard to have a stretch like Sequoia has had as an investment firm. Now everybody thinks if they sort of copy the method, they'll get the result. And of course, it's like competing with John Wooden's example. You can compete in John Wooden's example while you in fact do something else, which is what they're doing. Mm-hmm. And of course, but they're not going to get something else. They're going to get lousy results, not Wooden results.
Yeah. You talked about some of the joy you found with some of the investments Berkshire's made along the way. I think Washington Post was a great one.
Who doesn't like to happily enjoy extreme success accumulated with people who are extremely admirable? That's what Warren and I have gotten to do. Yeah. Well, of course that's a lot of fun. And a lot of the people at Sequoia have had a lot of fun because they've done a lot of similar things.
What, besides the Washington Post, though, which is one you mentioned in a 1995 speech as being one of the best investments ever, what other investments have been some of your favorites? I'm thinking of maybe a BYD or a Costco.
Well, they've all been favorites, but again, BYD is a good lesson. I didn't find BYD. Li Lu found BYD. And he encouraged me. I encouraged him to create this partnership. And he found, he occasionally would do a BYD, a venture capital investment in his early life, something I would never do, or seldom do anyway. And so he did one or two similar transactions that were a lot like Sequoia. He went into BYD and it was so small that it would have been appropriate in an early stage Sequoia investment. And it was a public company, but it was just so small it was barely a public company. And he went into it. And this little nothing company, headed by this, we could see that two things about Wan Chuan-Fu. One, he worked 70 hours a week, and the other was he was a genius. And of course, the idea of having somebody who was a genius and had all this mechanical aptitude that Warren and I lacked was interesting, at least to me. And so I was willing to take what was fiddling money by Munger standards and have some of it invested by Li Lu and Liu. But then he came to me and said, Wan Chuan-Fu wants to buy a bankrupt auto plant in China and starting there, go into the auto business. And I said, let us mind. God, this is horrible news. I said, it's a really dumb idea. Who in the hell's ever succeeded in creating a new auto company? And competition with older companies that are as admirable as Toyota and so forth, and Mercedes. And people who really know a lot about autos and have a big lead. And I said, let's talk him out of it. So we tried to talk Wan Chuan-Fu out of going into it. He paid no attention to us. He charged into it. Well, this year he'll probably sell 2 billion automobiles at huge profits for automobile. Just mouth-watering, delicious profits for auto. It's a huge stunt. And we, Warren and I share not Warren and I, but Li Lu and I share the distinction of urging him not to do it.
Thank God he didn't take you up on it.
Well, he did. That's what geniuses do. They don't listen. And it's just amazing what he's done. Of course, he's been lucky, but all the great records are partly work, partly talent, and partly luck. That's what you'd expect to win. Well, with this many people in the game of investment, of course the big winners are going to be people who get luck and who get work and talent and luck. That's what we've had. And what was interesting about Berkshire's history is what turned the first $300 million of Berkshire net worth into the first $3 billion of Berkshire net worth. Now, some people have now gone back and checked all the figures. Some people have figured it out. But the results we got in turning 300 million into 3 billion really quickly helped us a lot.
What was it?
Well, it was blue chip, stamps, and See's Candy, and the Buffalo News newspaper, and the early insurance operations under Ajit Jain when he came to us. And so everything worked at once. And we made these unholy profits out of these fiddling businesses that weren't that good. And it was a very remarkable thing. And there was some luck involved.
Warren has said that his worst trade ever was buying Berkshire Hathaway itself, the mills.
Yeah, sure.
What was your worst trade?
Well, I think my worst trade was buying a block for the Munger family in Alibaba, which is a pretty good company, but I think it got overhyped. And Jack Ma made mistakes in dealing with the Chinese government. I had some everybody has some bad ones. Yeah. You have an off day. The greatest tennis player goes out there someday to the center court and has a bad day. It happens.
I think people learn more from their mistakes sometimes than
and their bad days even.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
But what really is knowing you can have a very bad day. Do not live your life in such a fashion that a bad day can kill you.
Mm-hmm. Which means what when it comes to investing? Making sure you don't use leverage?
Well, they aim for the fences. It's like a hitter at baseball who tries to hit a home run on every pitch. Yeah. The great home hitters do not remotely swing at every pitch. What's halfway good? They wait for one that they can really handle. And that's what great stock pickers do too.
How do you know? Because I know leverage has always been something that you guys have shied away from, using too much leverage in situations. But you're also...
Well, yes, but it wasn't like we didn't use any. Mm-hmm. Insurance float gave us some leverage. That's why we went into it. Right. And averaged out over our lifetimes, we've benefited from insurance float.
But I guess the difference between not wanting to over leverage in a situation, but also knowing that if you think something's a real deal, to really load up on it, because you're only going to have so many great pitches, perfect pitches.
Yeah, we're not holding our cash for the boom that's going to come in 1999.
Yeah.
We may end up that way, but it may have a different protagonist, but that may happen, which is fine.
Mm-hmm. I think some of the lessons in life that you give people, though, I guess if it's so much harder to do things now, and you've talked about this, how for this generation it's going to be harder to do things like buy a house, make the same sort of money. be able to get ahead in such ways.
Of course. It's going to be harder to earn the same kind of percentage returns after taxes and inflation as this last generation of endowment managers earned. They've trained all these universities to expect a 6% yield return because that's what they want in order to do what to spend as they want. But it is not given in the stars that a 6% annual return will surely be wonderful for the good investors of an era.
I mean more broadly.
The great bulk of the investor may earn a lot less than 6% instead of a lot more.
I just mean for, the average person who's looking at this thinking it's going to be harder to buy a house. Is the American dream further out of reach for young people today?
Well, for some it is, and for some it isn't. There also was never a place where anybody who got a degree in computer science got a salary, a cash bonus, and a block of cheap stock every year for free, just floating in. And sometimes in a very good company. And there are more companies like that are offering benefits like that to people that are just starting out in computer science. So in some sense, it's easier. So for some people, it's easier. There'll always be something in a rich civilization that's a little better than other people get, as well as a little worse. And all these people prospering today in computer science are in the right place, and they're prospering more.
I've had people say recently that because of the multiple wars that are going on around the globe right now, if you look at Israel, if you look at Ukraine, what's happening with Russia, people say that we are potentially in the worst of times. If you look at China, for the potential to take over Taiwan.
It could end up blowing up human civilization, which I love so much. And naturally, I hate getting anywhere near. Imagine coming at life with the basic attitude of Grandfather Munger and Grandfather Ingham. How little I want to see human civilization blown up when it's been so hard to get it where it is from where it was. Of course, I don't want it blown up.
You worry about that right now?
Yes, of course I worry about it. You're mine. I don't spend too much time worrying about it because if it's something I can't fix myself, I frequently put it on something I call my too hard file. And then I just don't think about it. So I would say atomic war is in my too hard file. I think I know we're nearer it than I like being right now.
Charlie, Warren Buffett has said that he could fix the budget deficit problem in Washington by simply saying that any member of Congress couldn't be eligible for re-election if the national deficit was more than 3% of the GDP.
Well, yes, that kind of thing has been done in some places that have gotten enough trouble. And it has worked. It isn't that it can't physically be done. You certainly read about that. It can be done. Whether it will be done, neither Warren Buffett or I can tell you.
But is that the proper situation? It's just setting up the right incentives?
Well, we may come to a place where we simply have to, where we mismanage to the place where it's obviously we have to go back to something that's more like Adam Smith. And just take the inequality instead of the poverty. I like inequality a lot better than I like poverty.
I mean, is this modern monetary theory that's gotten out of control at this point, do you worry?
Of course, modern monetary theory. Modern monetary theory was a level of indebtedness, which in the past would have happened only during a war, can now be routinely created to avoid any kind of unpleasantness from some families getting squeezed by hardship at the very bottom of the economic order. I'm not sure the whole damn system works when some families aren't being squeezed at the bottom of the economic order. That may be our path to civilization, and maybe the only one we've got. In that case, we just have to be financially responsible whether it feels good or not, even whether it works well or not on a temporary basis. Maybe we just have to do it. And that may come, by the way.
I mean, the most recent news is that there was an 87% increase in the U.S. cost for borrowing money over the last year. Interest rates are high,
yeah,
but
they've
not,
come down to ridiculously low levels.
I was going to say they're high, but not high historically.
Well, talking economically,
Yeah.
when the English console didn't lose purchasing power way back in the 1800s, early, 2.5%. Where did we get the idea that every endowment should get 5%? 5% real, 2 or 3% inflation. That was written in the stars. I do not think it's written in the stars. We may have to do something so unpleasant that it looks like we're bringing back. When the Chinese said to the Russian peasants, earn your own grain by farming your own farm. Mm-hmm. And if it fails, it's your problem, not mine. Which is what they said. That was a hardship lesson at the time. It happened to work. It looked like a hardship lesson, but it really was an invitation to plenty. It was say, eat this spinach and it'll really be good for you.
It's capitalism, and you've said all along that capitalism is the best system.
Well, it works. If I like your little medallion and you like my $7 wristwatch, and we trade them, I may think your little medallion is worth X, and you may think my little wristwatch is worth $7. And we may work out some kind of a trade, but they just, well, if yours is worth $1,000 and mine is worth $1,000, we both made $1,000. Right. Because that's the way we value them, and this voluntary exchange hasn't cost the government anything. The GDP just goes up by $1,000, and I just think it stays. I'll exchange my watch for your medallion, and there's nothing else that will do that except capitalism, and do it automatically. You need capitalism plus somebody that creates a sound currency that uses a medium of exchange. When you got those two things, now you and I can have a simple system of exchanging watches for medallions. And we both want to do it. It's something we can do. And it's just, that was the stuff that somebody like Lon Fuller, he was interested in that stuff. Mm-hmm. And in seeking out to make his own work more meaningful, he tried to understand it. And I could see him struggling with it. And it was early in the history of economics as a discipline when this was going on. Now the main ideas had been discovered. But the main ideas had not been discovered in the law schools. I mean, Lon Fuller was one of the very few people who had some vague understanding of how economics interwove with law. And of course, it's the combination that helped me do as well as I did in life.
You've said that proper incentive structure should be set up for public policy, too, that you have to think about it very carefully. If you want to go into public policy, you should go in and think about what the end results are going to be from some of your actions that you take.
Once you get in the business of saying, to make it fairer so that the hardships of life are more widely distributed. You can call it fairer, you can call it more generous. Mm-hmm. But either way, they mean the same thing. They want the hardships of life to be mitigated for some people. That means other people can sell things to the government that they use in helping unfortunate people. And people have a different idea about the government. They think it's mildly cheating the government's all right. It's a big, dumb bureaucracy. They're engaged in manipulating us so they can live well. Of course, we can finagle a little so that we can live well. And therefore, it's okay to cheat the government. And the cheating of the government is so extreme. If I could just wave a wand and take all the cheating out of the workman's comp system, who could not be in favor of the workman's comp system?
Yeah.
It says if you're injured in course of doing your job that makes you a living and feeds your children, and now you can't function for a while, the government will lift down and give you a lifting hand. That's why they created compulsory workman's comp insurance, because it was just seemed unfair that some people got so utterly clobbered by things that weren't their fault. And yet that wonderful system, it is rife with fraud. They puff their injuries up so they can get time off. They puff their injuries up so they can have extra cash. They puff their injuries up so they can get permanent disability pay. And they have doctors and lawyers that help them do it. I mean, mislead the government into unfair payments. So that in an effort to cure an unfairness, we may find that there are whole areas where the way human nature works, we have to endure more hardship and the unfairness that comes with it. The ordinary rich person who talks that way is talking because he wants to hold all his wealth and keep and make the disparity between his wealth and the wealth of ordinary people get greater and greater. That's his ambition. But it doesn't work that he gets what he wants. The ordinary outcome for the well-to-do families is they go back to the mean. If you looked at somebody as rich as the Rockefellers, and that was really rich by the standards of ordinary human beings, even the Rockefellers will eventually go back to the mean. Pretty close anyway. It just happens. There's a lot of misfortune out there, that both fiscal and other kinds, and it takes it down one after another.
Henry Ford and John D. Rockefeller were the richest people in the world when you were born in 1924. Today it's Elon Musk. Is it just new people who come through with the system?
I don't regard Elon Musk as truly that rich, because I don't think it's sure that everything he's working on can work. I think he can get his ass handled to him in all those. I would not invest in Elon Musk's autos myself.
But you've been impressed by what he's built.
Yes, well, who cannot? Again, that's another lesson. What is the lesson of Elon Musk? The Musk is, it's always an outlet. Somebody who has a perfectly ridiculous amount of money, it almost always has an element of luck in it. He's been quite lucky in what he's picked to double down, double down, double down. And then he's used leverage so much that he's doubled down right to the edge of extinction, maybe 2 or 3 times. How many people can go to the edge of extinction without stepping into it? Well, he's done it 3 times. Maybe he's got 6 more in him. I don't know. I put Elon Musk in a pile. I never bet against him, and I never bet with him. As far as I'm concerned, he doesn't exist. My life works better if I treat the world as though he didn't exist.
Let's talk just about a few cultural things. I know reading is the one way that you say, the only way people can really get smart. You don't know anyone who's gotten smarter who doesn't read a lot.
Well, yes, even the fiction of the world, which includes a good deal of the Bible and Shakespeare and the great novels and all that stuff. The people were good at painting pictures and painting and telling stories, and people learn best when they learn a story. It looks more like a piece of a life, a story. So it works.
What are you reading right now?
Well, and now my life is, people know I'm a nut on books, and they kind of like Poor Charlie's Almanac or something.
Yeah.
So what do? They send me books, gifts. So I get so many books in this house as gifts that I no longer buy books. I just select from those that people give me. And I kind of like doing it. I think they kind of like doing it. It's very peculiar.
I think I heard that you've been binge watching Seinfeld. Is that right?
Well, I've finally gotten so I've seen so many of the reruns twice that I don't want to see them a third time. But I do like a bunch of self-centered people making the wrong decisions. It appeals to it is ridiculous. It's utterly ridiculous. These people go out of their way to get insane worries and so on. And they solve some of their problems with humor.
Yeah. It's a show about nothing, though.
Yes, but it's not really about nothing. It's about the humor of life being used to make life quite endurable. By kidding one another, which is what they're doing, because they're really kidding the audience, they are amusing us all.
There's an article that just came out about Oregon, which decriminalized all of illegal drugs and is now rethinking that decriminalization because of what it has led to. They thought by offering people help to cure their addictions that would be enough to offset it. What they've found instead is that they have places that are overrun with drug users on the streets, making it very difficult to live.
A mess.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course that's true, and that's the kind of problem you run into. The great rulers are people like Lee Kuan Yew and Lon Fuller. And Lee Kuan Yew, he said, figure out what works and do it. That was his sole message. Figure out what works and do it. And of course, mathematically that translates figure out what doesn't work and avoid it.
Right.
And both rules are correct. And you have to get it right, or as close to right as human beings can get it right.
Part of the advice that you give people in life is pretty basic stuff, but if you follow it, it's really excellent advice. I think your first one is have low expectations. The second one is have a good sense of humor. And the third one is surround yourself with the love of friends and family, obviously.
Yeah, sure.
I have a hard time thinking of a time when you set your expectations low, though.
Yeah, well, I did.
How so?
Well, let me give you an example. Perfect. Here I am, little boy growing up in Omaha, and my father, one of my father's best friends, is living 2 blocks away, and he has 2 sons, and I'm right in the middle of the age of his 2 sons. And I'm a little older than one, and a little younger than the other. And Eddie Jervis Jr. is sort of a mechanical genius. Mm-hmm. He can take anything apart quickly and put it right together and perfectly. And he also reads books all the time, and that's probably all he ever does is sit around reading books. He's a very bookish little genius with vast mechanical ability. And Eddie Davis Sr., his father, was the son of the leading mathematics professor at the University of Nebraska.
Right.
And he didn't have any money. In those days, he had a huge family, and they didn't die, and he couldn't. It was very difficult supporting them on a professor's income. And he went to all kinds of stratagems. He'd make his own raincoat out of a piece of oilcloth to save the money of buying a raincoat and so on. And nobody else did that, even by the standards of the 30s. But that's the way he did it. But he was a very talented man who wrote math textbooks and so on. And Dr. Davis had enormous mechanical ability, as well as enormous mental ability, and being physically dexterous. He could do anything. He saw things in 3 dimensions, and and it was quite obvious that anything that required mechanical ability, I would not be as good as the 2 Davises. You know, no amount of effort or work was ever going to do it, make me into a fly caster like Dr. Davis was or anything else. I just didn't have that kind of ability. And so I decided to stay the hell out of businesses where I would compete with people like Eddie Davis Jr. and Eddie Davis Sr. in their strong suit.
Knowing your competencies.
Knowing your circle of competency, right? Yeah. And that kept me away from those businesses, totally.
But part of your advice in life, I think, is to understand that change comes with life and adapt to it. And it's something I think about a lot in my own struggles with life.
Everybody knows that. I could have done a lot better if I'd been a little smarter, a little quicker.
What are you talking about? You've had success in everything you've done in life. What would you like to do differently?
I might have had multiple trillions instead of multiple billions.
Do you sit around thinking about this? What would you have done differently?
Yes, I think a lot about what I nearly missed by being just not quite smart enough or hardworking enough.
What would you have changed if you could go back and look at the last 100 years?
Of course, it would be a cinch to go back and do it, knowing what was going to happen now.
Yeah.
I would be the richest man on earth.
Well, what did you miss? What was there? Something where you zigged where you could have
started earlier, for one thing, and I would have compounded longer, and I would have compounded better.
So saved even more.
And of course, I would have ended up richer. I was going to live to be 100 years old. And I constantly am aware of the facts that I basically screwed up. Given the hand I dealt, I could have done a lot better, quite easily done a lot better.
But you are not somebody who spends a lot of money on yourself. We're sitting here in a beautiful house, but this is a house that you lived in for 70 years.
I know.
You could have moved and spent more.
Warren's been in his house for about 60 years.
Yeah.
We're similar. But you see, we're both smart enough to have watched our friends who got rich build these really fancy houses. And I would say in practically every case, they make the person less happy, not happier.
How so?
Having a basic house really helps you. Having a really fancy house that's good for entertaining 100 people at once is a very expensive thing to do. And it doesn't do you that much good.
I think one of the things you've said along the years, at least this is what I've been told, is that it's not staying rich that's difficult, it's staying sane.
Yeah, of course.
What happens?
Well, most people go a little crazy in some way or another.
I mean, that's a lot of your life. A lot of your life and advice is
avoiding traps.
Invert, and try and figure out where you don't want to be.
Yes, and then avoid it. Yes, of course. That's what everybody's life is with any sense. All the people I know, and my intimate friends now, they never would have become alcoholics. It was too dangerous. They don't get near it if it takes that many fine people into deep trouble.
Yeah.
I knew quite a people, having lived so long and have scattered around through different activities. And I bumped into a lot of different people. And I noticed as I got older and older that all the people that had very early heart trouble, the males that had very early heart trouble, had one thing in common.
What?
They all smoked a lot of cigarettes.
Oh.
So I could see that coming fairly early. And it's rather interesting. I tried to learn to smoke so I could be a cool kid like the other kids in high school. I tried to ruin my life, but it nauseated me. And so I said, the hell with this. People have lured me into a goddamn thing. You got to get nauseated by learning to do it. And I said, I'm not interested enough in going through a lot of nausea that I want to smoke, so I just didn't smoke.
Now, you did drink from time to time, right?
Yeah, sure, but I didn't. Again, I was, and I even drank to excess a few times, but I was always, there were enough alcoholics and near alcoholics in my own family to make me worry about liquor.
Yeah.
And so I was always very cautious about drinking liquor. Now, I did occasionally get drunk and throw up. That gave me the nausea, which enabled me to give up liquor.
Do you still drink? I mean, living to 100, everybody wants to know what's the secret. What is the secret for you? What did you conscientiously
I don't know the secret.
Yeah.
I avoided the standard ways of failing because my game in life was always to avoid all standard ways of failing. You teach me the wrong way to play poker, and I will avoid it. You teach me the wrong way to do something else, I will avoid it. And of course, I've avoided a lot because I'm so cautious.
But you do things you like you'll eat peanut brittle or
yes, doesn't matter that much.
Okay.
I drink Diet Coke.
Yeah.
I'm sure Diet Coke shortens my life a little, but I don't give a damn if the last week of lying there unconscious goes away. It's only the good part of life I want anyway.
There are all of these billionaires now, Silicon Valley types, who are trying to do anything they can to extend life, crazy things.
They find they've got a family full of Parkinson's. And of course, I watched my mother and my sister die of Parkinson's disease. And so I'm familiar with that one.
Yeah.
That's a very unpleasant thing. I do not like the last month of Parkinson's disease. Yeah. I've seen it up close.
Yeah.
It's no fun for the people in it. It's no fun for the people around them. It's no fun at all. And Diet Coke may be helping me skip it. Who knows? It's helping me skip the last month, not the first month.
There are some new ways that people think that they can extend life, though. And one of the crazier things I've heard is this idea of doing a blood transfusion with younger people so you get younger blood. I mean, there's some Silicon Valley types that are doing
that was
those
crazy.
things.
You got to remember that the practice of medicine in my father's boyhood was a charlatan's profession. People learned to make a living at it, and they gradually learned a few things they could do to help the patients. But basically, they did a lot of nonsensical things.
If other people want to know what the best way to live is, you would just tell them, avoid the crazy things, avoid the things that take you down.
Yes. Avoid crazy at all costs. Crazy is way more common than you think. It's easy to slip into crazy. Just avoid it, avoid it, avoid it. Of course.
I think another thing you've said is whatever you are, wealth and age will make you more so.
Yeah, sure.
You've given away a lot of your money.
Yeah, but not like Warren. More than half the Munger money has already been passed to the descendants. So I've made exactly the opposite. It was a smaller amount of money, but I made exactly the opposite decision for the majority of our money. The majority of his money he gave away. And now he didn't exactly give it away. It goes to Buffett foundations that go on for another 100 years. That's not exactly giving it. It's not exactly like wasting it. It's having some significance.
Is there anything left on your bucket list, anything you'd like to do?
Well, that's an interesting question. I am so old and weak compared to what I was when I was 96 that I no longer want to catch a 200-pound tuna. It's just too goddamn much work. To get it in takes too much physical strength. So I don't know why I would have paid any amount to catch a 200-pound tuna when I was younger and never caught one. And now if given the opportunity, I would just decline going. I won't even go out after them. There are things you give up with time. Yeah.
You're pretty active. You've got a busy social schedule. You're on Zoom. You have breakfasts and lunch.
Well, I like it that way.
Yeah.
That's my idea of a proper old age for me. And I didn't plan it. It just happened. And when it happened, I welcomed it. I am very good at recognizing unfair advantages. And I got unfair advantages in old age the way I got unfair advantages in non-old age. And when they came, I just grabbed them. Boom, boom, boom. The one grab I never made was for a third wife. Too late.
Why?
It's a little too late. There are people for whom it's a necessity. They're so much more comfortable in marriage than they are outside it, that they really need it to be human. It's just the way they're put together. And for such people, I recommend the 100-year-old dating app. But you'll find that if you put it in, that not many 100-year-olds want it. They're just lying there.
Your partnership with Nancy, your second wife.
Yes, it was a 52-year-old marriage.
Yeah.
It's a long marriage.
It is.
And she got to live it all the way to 86, which is a long life. And now there are some tough stretches, but most lives have some tough stretches.
Yeah.
And hers came very near the end.
I mean, Charlie, people probably look at you and think you're incredibly wealthy. You've had all these great opportunities and things that have happened in your life, but you've struggled too.
Of course, everybody struggles. The iron rule of life is everybody struggles.
I try and think back of what the toughest moments might have been and how you got through some of those. And I mean,
well, we all know how to get through them. The great philosophers of realism are also the great philosophers of what I call soldiering through. If you soldier through, you can get through almost anything. And it's your only option. You can't bring back the dead, you can't cure the dying child, you can't do all kinds of things. You have to soldier through, and you just somehow you soldier through. If you have to walk through the streets crying for a few hours a day as part of soldiering through, go ahead and cry away, but you can't quit. You can cry all right, but you can't quit.
you've had time in your life when you've done that?
Sure. I cried all the time when my first child died, but I knew I couldn't change the fate. In those days, the fatality with childhood leukemia was 100%.
That was your son.
That's gone away now. Now the cure rate is way up in the 90s, and it's an amazing development. Think of how much pleasure it's given me to watch the cure rate for leukemia. What mankind civilization did was soldier through those tough years that took away my cousin Tommy from meningitis, and took away my son Teddy from leukemia. Imagine pretty well fixing that disease for families who came into life later. It's a huge achievement. You can see why I like civilization. To me, civilization is what man has done with the last 2 centuries, and it's been a good thing to watch.
Charlie, Warren Buffett told me that a long, long time ago. You told him he should live his life, he should write his obituary the way he wants it written, and then live his life accordingly.
Yeah, sure.
I assume you've done the same thing for yourself.
Well, no, I've written my obituary the way I've lived my life, and if people want to pay attention to it, it's all right with me. And if they want to ignore it, that's okay with me too. I'll be dead, but what difference will it make? And so, but I think it's not a bad idea. Listen, Warren and I both live in the same house for decade after decade after decade. All our friends get rich and build bigger and better houses. And naturally, we both considered bigger and better houses. And I had a huge number of children, so it was justifiable even. And I still decided not to live a life where I look like the Duke of Westchester or something, and I was going to avoid it. I did it on purpose.
Why?
I didn't think it would be good for the children.
That it would spoil them?
Yeah, in a rich family, you think your duty is to use the wealth to live grandly. That's what everybody's doing with the money. You will learn from the people that are doing it.
Is the plan for your life, the obituary you would write in your 30s, the same you would write today?
Sure. I basically believe in the soldier on system. Mm-hmm. Lots of hardship will come, and you gotta handle it well by soldiering through. And a few rare opportunities will come. You gotta learn how to recognize them when they come, and not make too minor a trip to the pie counter when the opportunity is available. And those are simple lessons.
各位朋友，今天要和大家分享的是一位投资界传奇留给世界的最后馈赠，他就是查理·芒格，那位与巴菲特并肩作战近50年，用智慧影响了无数人的99岁智者。而我们今天要聊的，正是他人生最后一次公开访谈中那些值得每个年轻人刻进骨子里的忠告：常阅读，早懂复利。可能很多朋友不知道，这次访谈有多特殊。2023年11月，99岁的芒格在洛杉矶家中接受了 CNBC 的专访。原本这是为他即将到来的100岁生日准备的特别节目，没想到仅仅2周后，这位智者就永远离开了我们。所以这段访谈成了他留给世人最珍贵的告别箴言，而播客 Acquire 的那次访谈更是他人生中首次也是最后一次播客分享，每一句话都分量千钧。芒格在访谈里反复强调，我这辈子所有的智慧几乎都来自阅读。这位投资大师的书房里堆满了各行各业的书籍，从法律、经济到哲学、生物学，甚至是心理学著作。他说自己小学时就敢质疑老师的观点，因为他通读了弗洛伊德的全集后，发现那些理论并不像老师说的那么绝对。而这种批判性思维正是来自海量阅读积累的多学科视角。他还特别提到了自己的榜样本杰明·富兰克林。富兰克林只接受过2年小学教育，却通过自学掌握了代数、拉丁文和多门学科知识，而芒格自己也践行着这种终身阅读的习惯。他说，智商决定了你起点有多高，但阅读能决定你能走多远。对年轻人来说，我们可能没有天才般的智商，但通过持续阅读，搭建起多学科的思维模型，就能像芒格说的那样，打好上帝发的牌，积累属于自己的相对优势。除了阅读，芒格最想让年轻人尽早明白的就是复利的力量。作为价值投资的坚定践行者，他和巴菲特用近50年的时间，让伯克希尔哈撒韦的财富实现了指数级增长，而这背后的核心逻辑就是复利。芒格在访谈中举了个很实在的例子，就像种一棵树，最好的时间是20年前，其次是现在。复利也是如此，越早接触，你就越能感受到时间带来的魔力。这里的复利不只是金钱上的投资回报，更是知识的复利，能力的复利。每天坚持阅读1小时，看似不起眼，但1年后你会发现自己的认知早已脱胎换骨。每天精进一项技能，日积月累，就会形成别人无法超越的优势。很多年轻人总觉得复利是投资人的专属词汇，其实不然。芒格说，多数人一蠢就是一辈子，不是因为他们不够聪明，而是因为他们懒得积累。那些看似遥不可及的成功，往往都是复利效应的结果。就像他自己，从律师到投资大师，不是一蹴而就的飞跃，而是几十年如一日的学习、思考和积累，最终让每一点微小的进步都在时间的催化下产生了巨大的能量。访谈中，芒格还分享了他应对人生困境的秘诀：艰难常常降临，你必须像战士一样应对，挺过去。这位经历了无数风雨的智者，一生并非一帆风顺， 但他始终保持着坦诚和务实的态度。他说自己本可以做得更好，这种谦逊和持续精进的精神正是复利思维的最好体现，不满足于当下的成就，始终保持成长的姿态。他还特别提醒年轻人不要急于求成。在这个追求快节奏的时代，很多人都想走捷径，但芒格用自己的一生证明，真正的成功从来都不是靠运气，而是靠长期主义的坚持。阅读带来的认知提升，复利带来的财富增长，都需要时间的沉淀。就像他在投资中从不追逐短期热点，而是坚守价值，年轻人在人生道路上也应该耐得住寂寞，把阅读和积累变成一种习惯。正是因为芒格的智慧戳中了年轻人的痛点。我们都渴望成功，渴望拥有幸福长寿的人生，而芒格已经用99年的人生经验为我们指明了方向，用阅读搭建认知的基石，用复利放大人生的价值。各位朋友，芒格已经离开了我们，但他的智慧永远留在了世间。99岁的他在最后一次访谈中依然在强调阅读和复利的重要性，这本身就是最有说服力的证明。对我们年轻人来说，不需要羡慕别人的天赋和起点，只要从现在开始，每天坚持阅读，尽早建立复利思维，在学习、工作和投资中践行长期主义，就一定能在人生的长跑中收获属于自己的成果。最后，愿我们都能铭记芒格的忠告，把阅读变成日常，让复利成为习惯。就像这位智者所说，如果你坚持下去，你会得到几乎任何东西。让我们带着这份智慧，脚踏实地，慢慢积累，在时间的长河中活成自己想要的样子。感谢大家的观看，也别忘了点赞收藏，把这份珍贵的人生箴言分享给更多需要的朋友。